Hi, I'm Cassie, and today I'm going to be your preceptor. Today we're going to be discussing giving report, which I know can be scary, especially if you're a new grad. Even as a traveler, I still get nervous because you just don't know what kind of temperament you're going to deal with. I've been seeing a lot of hilarious videos on TikToks about like giving report to people who ask the most unnecessary questions, and that can be nerve-wracking, especially when you're new. Now that I'm a little bit more seasoned, I don't be taking it, you know what I'm saying? And that is just something that you build with confidence. And I will politely tell somebody like, are you planning on checking the chart today? Because here's the thing about report. I can give you the best report ever, and it could all be wrong information. You know what I'm saying? So I take everything that anybody says with a grain of salt, because I personally will be going into the chart myself and reading those notes. Like, you have to do that. You have to take some time. Even if you're really busy starting off at 6, that's still something you should plan to make time for in your shift at some point in time, because that's the only way you're really gonna 100% know what's going on with your patient, as well as talking to them and seeing them and, you know, assessing them yourself. So you need to assess your patient and you need to assess your chart. Like, those two things are non-negotiable, and I feel like a lot of people try to skip the step of assessing your chart because you may be busy, but you have to find some time, even if it's 1 second, just to be like, okay, I want to know what their exact history is, because the history in the H&P is 100%, like, that's the doctor to the patient. Anybody can input history within a chart. Like, you can just update it whenever you want. So even looking through there, that could not be 100% accurate. So yeah, let's just jump right in. Okay guys, so now we are actually giving report. When I'm giving report, you just kind of have to figure out the temperament of people. So you have to start there. As a traveler, I like to just give everybody their time. Let me see how you're going to react when I give report versus receiving report. Those things are important to me, and I take it seriously, because it really can tear your day up when you find out that you're giving report to somebody who is unreasonable. Like, oh my gosh, I have to give her how many patients? She's gonna be dragging this computer into each room trying to go through all of the results. You have to really put your foot down with some of these nurses, and some stuff I'm just not gonna tolerate. There's also people that are really chatty, i.e. me. I get really chatty sometimes, and I love to tell people, like, 1, I talk really fast because I'm from New York. 2, if I get too chatty, just cut me off. This is why I have further organized my report and like really made it a way where I can just read it like a script, because sometimes you can get kind of off topic, like, oh my gosh, so this happened last night, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, I just need to cut myself off. So that's why I like to do the sticky notes, and I'll even put my updates, like, you know, patient had a BM, patient went and got an MRI, this was the result of the MRI, patient got a CT, this was the, like, because it can get really crazy. Now I'm telling you all about how I took them to CT, and, you know, the patient used the restroom on the way in the hallway, and it's too much. We just need to get to the bottom of it. Report is also very important so that you can also learn the temperament of your patient. Some people they're there to have a good time, but some people are, you know, you're at the hospital, you know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to come in for elective surgery that you already had mentally prepared for, and it's another thing to come in because, you know, your stomach was hurting, you came into the ER, and now you found out you have a small bowel obstruction and you have an NG tube. Like, this person is not excited right now. They're not in a good space mentally. It's a lot to take in, to like go from just being like, oh, I was chilling, to now I have all these cords coming out of my body, and it's scary. So report is a good time to kind of figure out like how your patient is, because I don't want to further annoy you if you're already in an annoyed state. Like, or sometimes, you know, I have my patients that are really chatty and they want to chat. Like, me and my patient the other day were really going in on 90 Day Fiance Happily Ever After I medicated her, because it was her show. She had been there for months. She's there for months, and she didn't have anybody to talk to. And just those 10 minutes that we spent geeking about Kobe and them, girl, come on. Like, she was excited. Some people want that and some people don't. And I love to figure that out during report myself, because it really helps, you know, continuation of care. So when I'm giving report, again, you know, I'm gonna start from the list, and I'll be like, all right, girl, this is the patient in room 1. They are a 50-year-old female. They came in on 5/19. Well, hold on, what did I say? 5/20? They came in on 5/20 for a right femur fracture. They had surgery on 5/21, a right IM nailing. They have aquacell dressing. It's intact, no drainage. It was done by this surgeon, this doctor. Sometimes that is important. The facility I'm at now, that doesn't really matter, but the floor, I have to work on like purely surgical floors, and you always want to know who the surgeon is, because some surgeons come early in the morning and, you know, they want to see their patient and they want the room to be set up a certain way because maybe they're going to do a dressing change. Those things are important. Again, and if you have to call someone, you want to know which doctor, which group you have to call. So I'll let them know who did the surgery, if they're a hospitalist patient, because again, important. If the patient needs something, maybe their pain medication isn't working, am I going to be calling hospitalist, or do I have to sit on the phone and like call the actual surgeon? They may be in surgery. They may not have a PA that's in the building. Like, those are all things that you need to be thinking about, versus hospitals is like, you could just call that number and boom, 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 get things done. So from there, I'm letting you know, they also have an allergy to latex. So just be careful about what tapes you're using, things of that nature. And they're also allergic to penicillin. And then the patient is also on tele. They've been running normal sinus rhythm all day. They are on tele because I love to tell people the reason why someone is on tele, because that's important. I have patients that have no cardiac issues, have never had cardiac issues, that end up on telemetry, and 9 times out of 10 it's because maybe during the procedure, while they were on monitoring, they noticed that, okay, their heart rate dropped for this many beats, or their heart did this during surgery, and they'll put them on telemetry for just 24 hours observation to make sure nothing like that happens again, especially after anesthesia. Anesthesia can really take a toll on someone's body, so you could have somebody on tele for that. You could have someone on tele because they have AFib. I've had patients that are chronic AFib and they will not put them on tele, so you want to know why. Also, I've had patients that are simply on tele for electrolyte replacement issues. Again, if you see that someone's potassium is going up or down, you gotta be on tele. If your potassium is going out of whack, I'm called, hey, I don't know if I'm looking through the labs, and their potassium is doing a lot over these last couple of days. Are we gonna put them on tele? Can we put them on tele? We must put them on tele. So sometimes it has to do with just their electrolytes. These things you want to know, because again, if their telemetry is about to expire or something, I'm calling to get it renewed. Because what do you mean? Their potassium still is out of whack. We're not discontinuing this. Reorder it. Thank you. Once I finish reading across the board, now I've moved on to my sticky notes. So from here I can say, okay, so this person had a ground level fall. They found them. Were they at the nursing home? Were they at home? You want to know this because again, this has to do with the plan. Are they going to rehab or are they going home? And if they were at home, do they live alone? Do they have a husband? Do they have a daughter that's taking care of, family member? Anything like that, you want to know that. So I'll let somebody know, like, this is the time where you can say, like, okay, this person has a right femur fracture and this is how they got it. They fell at the nursing home. I've had patients that they were at the nursing home and they just happened to notice that one of their legs, like maybe the patient got up and fell and then got back in bed. Anything could have happened, and you want to know this information because, again, this is how you can tell. Does your patient have dementia? Are they a jumper? I'll be asking those questions because if they found you on the floor, are you currently trying to jump out the bed? Now I'm scared. Let's get the side rails up. Let's get some restraints if we have to. What do we need? Do we have a sitter? Like, we have to get to the bottom of this. All of these things help because if you feel like during report you're getting these patients and you're like, okay, now I have 2 dementia patients that are both trying to jump out of the bed. This is the time to tell your charge. It's like, hey, I don't know if you know, but my group is kind of heavy. This is what I have going on. Blah, 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 blah. This is where you got to be thinking about all these things. So they went ahead and they had this right IM nailing. The aquacell dressing is intact, no drainage to stay on. Or if they have a dressing that is different from an aquacell, they have, ABD dressing that's due for change every 24 hours. It was last done, at this time. Those are the things that you're thinking about. Then you go to the history. You're talking about hypertension. We discussed that previously. They have hyperlipidemia. They are diabetic. They have been running. I love to tell people like, hey, this was their last blood sugar. Because sometimes when you're giving report or getting report and you notice that all of your patients are diabetics, that's another, I'm already thinking about time. Because if everybody has to get insulin, you already know you are in for a ride that day. Like if everyone has to get insulin every single time, you're in for a ride, and you want to know that information. So I always let my oncoming nurse know, like, they're diabetic, they're ACHS. I didn't have to give them any insulin last night. And I always check trends again. I go back and look for days, for as much as I can. Like, granted, you know, somebody could have just got there, that's different. But if they've been there for a few days, I want to see how you've been trending with your sugars, because if they're like a brittle diabetic, very scary, you want to know when you should or shouldn't be giving them insulin. And that's also a conversation that you can only have with the nurse that's already taking care of the patient. So sometimes I'll have somebody that's really, really high, and it's like, am I about to give them 30 units of Levemir tonight? Because I gave it to them yesterday and they went from 200 to 30. Now it's like, okay, let me call the doctor. You know what I'm saying? These are things that you want to tell people, because you won't know. If this is my first day taking care of somebody, I won't know that they're a brittle diabetic, or I won't know that, girl, honestly, none of their insulin is touching them. I tried to call the doctor, they didn't get back to me. You may have to call them. This, I won't know because I just got there. So these are things you can use the chart to see and kind of get your own story of the patient and see how you need to take care of them. So be thinking about that during report 2. Of course, you want to know if their skin is intact, because if it's not, that means that you have some dressing changes. That's something else that you need to account for when you go into this patient's room and you're about to do all of their care. I need to know if you have a dressing change, because before I even get in there, I'm going to like make sure I have all of the supplies with me. I'm going to make sure that I read the dressing order perfectly to make sure that I'm doing it exactly how wound care wants it to be done, because again, we want this to heal. We don't want you to have to go home and not have a plan with this wound. And if it can get better while you're here, hooray, we're gonna do it. So once we get to the plan, we've finished talking about the history, the skin, you know what IV site they have. This is where I would also write down my IV site, and if they have any continuous fluids or if they're INT'd, this is the perfect place to write it too. I write it under history, or sometimes I'll just, because I leave space in between each section, so sometimes I'll have a little space and I just scribble whatever I need to scribble in. So sometimes that's where like the IV and the skin will fall in. Once we get to the plan, if the patient is going to rehab, I'm already thinking ahead, like, okay, I really need to go back and make sure I read their case management notes to make sure that, you know, the insurance has approved it, or maybe the insurance didn't approve and now they have to try to go like start the process over and find new placement for them. So these are all concerns that I have when it comes to rehab, because that just means, is this patient going to be going soon? Like, we need to be, again, prepping them for their BM, prepping them, letting their families know, hey, you know, they found placement. So being able to know those things is important. If they aren't going to rehab, because you could be having a patient that's going home, I love to make sure to ask them, like, hey, is there like any equipment that you think you may need? Because even if this conversation has been going on for days and days, there's new things that people think of course. Or maybe this is like the first night where their family member that's gonna actually be helping take care of them at home is able to stay. So I love to have that conversation with their family members too, and with the patient while I'm in there, like, hey, you know, I read the note, or I was told during a report that you are going back home with home health. Is there anything that you need? Do you have a commode? Do you have a walker? Do you have a cane? Like, I like to ask those questions because some people don't think about those things, like in terms of, okay, when I get home, this is what I'm gonna need. Because when you're in the hospital, we have it all. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, by the time I get home, I should be fine. But, you know, do you have stairs? I like to ask all of these questions. And if you don't have the answers, this is the perfect time for us to figure it out. And then I also will let anybody know, like, hey, since we had this conversation, I definitely would bring this up to case management tomorrow, because they're the ones that are going to be able to help you. But if you weren't thinking about it and then you don't think about it until you get home, that's a whole nother ball game, because you're trying to figure out how to get equipment when you're already home. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. I truly hope that this was helpful. I hope that you learn to build your confidence when it comes to giving report, because I know how hard it can be to build confidence in the hospital. It took me a year, but once that year kicked in, I saw everybody's temperament, I saw how people was moving. I was like, oh, y'all not trying me because I'm the young nurse here. Not on my watch, because now I know what I'm talking about. I'm critically thinking. It's making sense. You cannot trick me into staying longer than I need to. I'm going home. You clocked in, it's time to work. Same goes for me. I clocked in, it's time to go to work. I'm not having any nurse stay over to do anything. If you're not staying over to do charting, you need to go home, because you've done what you had to do. You were here for 12 hours. You've done everything that you can do. You've done it. It's my turn now. or I've done everything I can do. It's time for me to go home now. You have clocked in, babe. It's time to put your script, roll them sleeves up, grab that machine and get rolling. Get rolling. I love you guys so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.